I want to talk about something that many people don't understand unless they've lived through it themselves, the relentless nature of chronic illness. It's not just something that takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your mind. It reshapes your relationship with yourself and the world. It alters your perception of time, of energy, and of everything you once thought you knew. There's something almost surreal about waking up every day and knowing that the battle you face won't just be over when you get out of bed. It's not like a temporary illness where you know with time you'll heal and everything will go back to normal. With chronic illness, the battle is constant. It's ongoing. Some days it feels like you're swimming against the tide, never quite able to reach the shore. You fight with your body, your mind, and sometimes even with the people who care about you because they don't always understand the depth of what you're going through. And that's one of the hardest parts, the loneliness. It's a loneliness that comes from not being able to fully express what's happening inside of you. You might be surrounded by people who love you, but unless they've walked this path themselves, there's an invisible gap that forms between you and the world. It's as if there's an ocean between you and everyone else, and even though they want to help, there are things you simply can't explain. But here's the thing, it doesn't mean you're alone. I've come to realize that chronic illness, as isolating as it can feel, also has the power to bring us closer to others if we let it. When you live with chronic illness, you become more attuned to the struggles of others. You learn to see past the surface, to recognize when someone is silently hurting, even if they don't say a word. You start to understand that everyone has their own battles, their own challenges, some visible, some invisible. It's an unexpected gift, really, this heightened sense of empathy. And this is why I'm passionate about talking about chronic illness, about sharing our stories. The more we share, the more we realize we're not alone in this. And the more we connect, the more we can heal together. Our stories, our struggles are not weaknesses, they are bridges to greater understanding. They are the threads that connect us, weaving a tapestry of shared humanity. Over time, I've learned to reframe the way I see my illness. Instead of viewing it as an obstacle, I've begun to see it as a teacher. It has forced me to slow down. It has forced me to slow down. It has forced me to pause and reflect on my life. And it's made me deeply question the values and beliefs I once held about what matters. Before I got sick, I had these grand ideas about what my life would look like, big career goals, big accomplishments. I was driven by the need to do more, to be more. But chronic illness shattered that vision. It didn't just alter my health, it altered my entire view of success. And at first that was hard to swallow. I felt like I was losing everything I had worked so hard for. But what I didn't realize at the time was that I wasn't losing anything at all, I was gaining so much more. I learned that success isn't about climbing the highest mountain or achieving the most in the least amount of time. Success, I discovered, is about being able to wake up every morning and keep going, despite the obstacles. It's about being kind to yourself on the bad days and celebrating the small victories on the good ones. It's about allowing yourself to evolve, to embrace a different kind of life, one that doesn't have to look like everyone else's. And that's been the biggest challenge for me, letting go of who I thought I should be and embracing who I am now. I had to learn to let go of guilt, of the feeling that I wasn't doing enough. I had to unlearn the societal pressures that tell us we need to be constantly productive, constantly achieving, constantly on the go. Chronic illness has taught me that rest is not a luxury. It's a necessity. For years I pushed myself too hard. I ignored the signals my body was sending me because I thought I had to keep up with everyone else. I thought I had to be perfect because perfection is what the world tells us we need to be, right? But perfection is a myth. It's an illusion that keeps us from living authentically. And I've learned to embrace imperfection, to embrace the fact that my body has limitations, that my mind sometimes needs rest, and that it's okay to take a break. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this: you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be constantly striving. It's okay to rest. It's okay to need help. It's okay to need help. It's okay to say no. You are worthy of compassion both from others and from yourself. Living with chronic illness is an exercise in self-compassion. It's about acknowledging that your limitations don't define you. It's about being patient with yourself, understanding that you are doing the best you can with the cards you've been dealt. And it's about learning to ask for help when you need it, whether that means relying on a friend, a family member, or a professional. There will always be people who don't understand. There will always be those who question your choices, who don't get why you can't do as much as they can, who don't understand why you need to rest. But that's okay. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't have to justify your existence, your worth, or your need for care. And living with chronic illness also brings you face to face with your deepest fears. The fear of the future, the fear of the unknown, the fear of never getting better. But I've come to realize that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. And we can choose to live with purpose, with intention, and with an open heart. We can choose to find beauty in the small things, to connect with others, and to keep pushing forward even when it feels impossible. And when the fear comes, as it often does, I remind myself that I'm not alone. I remind myself that I am surrounded by people who love me, by a community of people who understand, by those who walk beside me, even when the road is rough. There's power in that. There's power in knowing that you are supported, that you are loved, that you matter. Living with chronic illness isn't easy, and it's not always fair, but it's also not the end of your story. It's a chapter. And it's a chapter that can teach you things you never expected to learn. It can teach you the value of rest. It can teach you the importance of kindness. It can teach you how to be resilient, how to fight when you're exhausted, and how to love even when it feels impossible. So if you're living with chronic illness, I want you to remember this: you are not defined by your illness. You are not your pain, your fatigue, or your limitations. You are so much more than that. And I believe in you, your strength, your ability to rise, and your capacity to find joy, even in the most difficult of times. But here's the thing: no one talks about living with chronic illness doesn't just force you to confront your own limitations. It challenges how you view the world around you. Right? It forces you to reconsider what it means to be normal, to live a life worth living. So many of us, before our illnesses, are chasing after some ideal life, some perfect version of ourselves, thinking that happiness is defined by what we do, how we look, or how much we achieve. But chronic illness strips away that illusion. It teaches you, in no uncertain terms, that your value is not tied to your productivity, your health, or your ability to keep up with a fast-paced world. In the beginning, it feels like a loss. There's grief in the fact that you can't do things the way you used to, or the way you wish you could. But as time goes on, you start to realize something profound. You've been given the gift of perspective. You see the world differently. You begin to notice the small, often overlooked moments, the quiet conversations, the shared smiles, the way the sunlight filters through the trees. These were the things that never seemed important before, but now they are everything. And in this space, you discover that your life doesn't have to look like anyone else's to be meaningful. I remember a time when I would have been devastated by a missed opportunity, a project that didn't go as planned, or not meeting my expectations for the day. Now, living with chronic illness, I've had to redefine success entirely. Success is no longer about what you can accomplish, but how you face the challenges that come your way. It's about being resilient, about getting back up even when your body says no. It's about learning to be okay with who you are in this very moment, even if it's not who you thought you would be. In fact, chronic illness brings you face to face with one of the most profound realizations: you are enough just as you are. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to fit into society's mold of what it means to be strong, successful, or worthy. You are worthy simply because you exist. The world doesn't always recognize it, but I want you to understand your worth doesn't come from what you can do, but from who you are. It's in your kindness, your resilience, your ability to keep going despite the pain, and your willingness to show up for others, even on your hardest days. And when you start to live from this place of self-acceptance, everything changes. You begin to attract people who see you for who you truly are, not just the illness, not just the struggles, but the person behind it all. The people who will stand by you, who will support you without needing you to explain or justify yourself. I've been fortunate to have such people in my life. People who, despite not fully understanding what I go through, are there when I need them. Whether it's offering a listening ear, helping me with a task I can't manage on my own, or just being present in those quiet, difficult moments, they make all the difference. And I know that for those of us living with chronic illness, this community, this network of support is invaluable. But what happens when the people around you don't understand? What happens when the support isn't there, or worse, when you're met with judgment instead of empathy? That's another layer of difficulty we must navigate, learning to advocate for ourselves, learning to communicate the reality of living with a chronic illness. It's hard. It's exhausting. But it's also essential. We are the experts in our own bodies, and we must find the courage to speak up for our needs. We must find the strength to set boundaries, to say no when we need to, and to ask for help when it's necessary. We live in a world that often prioritizes productivity over well-being, but we can't allow that to dictate our worth. Chronic illness teaches you to push against those societal pressures, to challenge the notion that your value is tied to what you can do. It forces you to find a new definition of success, one that honors your health, your needs, and your limitations, but also recognizes the strength it takes to keep going. And so, we also learn patience with ourselves and with the world around us. Patience for when things don't go according to plan, when we can't follow the timeline we once had in mind. Chronic illness doesn't just teach you to live in the present moment, it teaches you to live without expectation. It teaches you to let go of the need to control everything. You begin to accept the ebb and flow of life, understanding that some days will be good and some will be bad. And both are okay. I think there's a misconception that having a chronic illness means you're stuck, that you're in a constant state of decline, always battling against something you can never fully overcome. But that's not the full picture. Yes, there are setbacks. Yes, there are days when everything feels impossible. But there are also moments of growth, of peace, and of unexpected joy. There are times when you find yourself doing things you thought you couldn't do, achieving things that seemed out of reach. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. I've learned that there's no timeline for healing, no universal way to measure your journey. It's personal, it's unique, and that's okay. The world may not always make room for those of us with chronic illness, but we can create our own space. We can redefine what it means to live well, what it means to thrive, even in the face of adversity. Living with chronic illness doesn't mean giving up on your dreams. It means adjusting your expectations, finding new ways to pursue those dreams, and being kind to yourself along the way. It means finding joy in the small things, the laughter shared with a friend, the quiet moments of rest, the beauty in the world that you might have overlooked before. And so, as we move forward, living with chronic illness, let's remember that we are not broken. We are not our illnesses. We are people who are navigating a difficult path, but we are still whole. We are still worthy of love, of respect, of compassion, and of understanding. And together we can create a world that recognizes that. A world that values not just what we can do, but who we are. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding. And thank you for walking this journey with me.